My name's Jack Brenner, and I turned 72 this past spring. Funny thing is, I didn't plan a big party or expect anyone to remember. Still, some part of me hoped my daughter would. I spent that morning in my little house off the Ashley River, polishing the same oak table I built 40 years ago when Lily was 5, and still thought I could fix anything. The house smelled like lemon oil and coffee. Outside, Spanish moss swayed in the warm South Carolina air. It should have been a good day. Before we continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I started cooking early. Pulled pork slow in the oven, mac and cheese bubbling, sweet tea sweating in the pitcher. I set 4 plates, one for me, one for Lily, one for her husband Jason, and one for my grandson Noah. Lily had said, "We'll drive down after work, Dad. We'll bring dessert." Her voice sounded so sure, the way it always does before she forgets something. By 5 o'clock, the pulled pork was tender, and the table looked like something out of a Southern Living magazine. The porch lights came on along the river. The air turned gold. I checked my phone. No text, no call. I told myself, maybe traffic. By 6:30, the mac and cheese had gone cold, and the sweet tea had turned watery from the ice. I lit a candle anyway. When the clock hit 8, I cut one slice of carrot cake, the one I'd bought at Publix, and wrapped the rest in foil. I wrote on the label, "Birthday 70, uneaten." The quiet felt heavy, like a blanket I couldn't shake off. It's not the first time she's forgotten me. 2 years ago, she missed Father's Day because she was closing a deal. Last Christmas, she sent an Amazon gift card that arrived 2 weeks late, no note attached. But this one hurt different. I guess 70 sneaks up on you. Makes you measure time by who still shows up. Around 9, I sat on the porch, watching the shrimp boats drift by. The smell of salt and diesel hung in the air. Across the street, a family laughed over a birthday song, their voices carrying in the wind. I thought of all the years I'd worked double shifts at the Ford plant just to put Lily through college. $32,000 in student loans. Paid off one overtime at a time. She'd promised she'd pay me back. I told her she didn't have to. I just wanted her to be better than I was. That night, I opened a dusty photo album. Lily in her cap and gown. Lily at her wedding. Me giving her away. I kept thinking about something I used to tell her when she was little. A promise is a man's word, Lil. Once you break it, you break yourself. I guess I never thought she'd test that lesson on me. My phone lit up just once around 10:45. For a moment, my heart jumped. It was a text. From Lily. No happy birthday, no sorry dad, just, "Hey, I need to talk to you. It's important. Please don't say no this time." I stared at the screen for a long time. The wording hit me wrong. Please don't say no this time. Not please call me back. Not how are you. It sounded like business, not family. Still, I texted back, "Everything okay?" She read it, but didn't reply. That small gray seen mark sat there like a fingerprint I couldn't wash off. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The kitchen still smelled faintly of lemon and cold pork. I poured coffee, black, and sat at the same table from last night. 4 plates stacked neatly, as if they were waiting for someone who never came. I kept checking my phone, even though I knew she wouldn't call before noon. She never did. At 11, a message finally came through. Just one line. "Jason's business is in trouble. We need to talk. Can I come by later?" I stared at the words, trying to ignore the twist in my gut. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't mention missing my birthday. And that word, need, it stuck out like a warning bell. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, sipping coffee that had gone bitter in the pot. Something in me already knew this wasn't about family. It was about money. Again. I went out to my garage, the one I'd turned into a little workshop after retirement. My hands still worked fine, but my heart, not so much. On the workbench sat a half-fixed radio, the kind from the 70s that still hums when you get the wires right. I plugged it in and turned the dial until the static gave way to an old Johnny Cash song. For a second, the world felt steady. Then my phone buzzed again. It was another message from Lily. Dad, we really need your help. It's about 50,000. Please don't freak out. My hand froze halfway to the radio knob. 50,000. Outside, thunder rolled far off the coast. Inside, the song kept playing. I keep a close watch on this heart of mine, and for the first time, I wondered if the lesson I'd taught her about promises, about love, had somehow turned into the weapon she was about to use against me. I didn't sleep much that night. The number 50,000 kept circling in my head like a vulture. At dawn, I drove into town for gas and grabbed a black coffee at the Shell station. When you've spent a lifetime fixing engines, you learn to listen for the faintest rattle before a breakdown. That text from Lily, it was the sound of something cracking for good. By noon, she pulled up in front of my house. White Tesla Model Y, spotless, humming like it belonged in another world. She waved, smiling that same way she used to when she wanted to borrow the truck in high school. "Hey, Dad," she said, like we'd just seen each other yesterday. I stood on the porch, still holding the mug from breakfast, and watched her climb out in heels that didn't belong anywhere near gravel. "Can we talk inside?" she asked. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one that had held her birthday cakes, her prom corsage, the letters from UNC she was so proud of. She didn't even notice the foil-wrapped carrot cake still in the fridge. Jason joined us 10 minutes later, walking in like he owned the place. Designer jacket, that permanent tech guy smirk. He put his phone face down on the table. "We wouldn't be here if it wasn't serious," he said. I took a slow breath. "You said something about 50,000. Jason leaned forward. "It's temporary, Jack. Just until the company stabilizes. We've got investors lined up, but we need to cover payroll, or it all collapses. You'd be protecting your family's future," Lily chimed in. "You've always said family sticks together." Her tone was sweet, but I heard the edge underneath. I looked at both of them. "You two live in a house worth $500,000, drive a Tesla, and you're asking your retired father, who still shops at Piggly Wiggly, for 50 grand? Jason's smile faltered. "It's not like that. It's an investment. You'll get it back." That word, investment, it caught my ear. Too practiced, too smooth. I asked what exactly the company did. He gave me a wall of tech jargon about data aggregation for medical platforms. I'd rebuilt engines for 40 years. I know when someone's selling snake oil. Lily reached across the table, her nails tapping the wood. "Dad, please." "It's just money." There it was, the phrase that made my stomach twist. The same words she used when I helped her pay off those student loans. "It's just money." I didn't answer right away. I just studied her face. The same blue eyes as her mother's, only harder now. "I'll think about it," I said finally. Jason stood, already checking his phone. "We need an answer by tomorrow. Our lawyer's waiting." When they left, the air felt thick with something rotten. That night, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe they really were desperate. So I did what I've always done, dug into the details. I opened my old Dell laptop and searched Jason's company name. The first thing that came up was an article in the Charleston Gazette. Local startup under investigation for tax irregularities. My stomach dropped. I read it twice. The words were clear. Jason's firm had been flagged for misreporting income and misusing investor funds. There was even a line about the state's Department of Revenue stepping in. The next morning, I printed the article, slid it under a magnet on the fridge, and drove to Waffle House on Highway 17, the same one Lily and I used to go to after her soccer games. I texted her to meet me there. She arrived alone this time, sunglasses on, though it was cloudy. "What's this about?" she asked. I slid the paper across the table. She scanned it, jaw tightening. "It's exaggerated," she said quickly. "Jason told me the reporter had an agenda." "You lied to me," I said quietly. "This isn't about saving your home. It's about covering his fraud." She looked up sharply. "You think I'd be part of something illegal?" "I think you'd do anything to keep the life you think you deserve," I said. For a second I thought she'd cry. Instead, she laughed. Cold, short. You were never there for Mom when she got sick. Don't start pretending to be a hero now. That one hit deep. I'd stayed away from her mother's hospital bed at the end, not because I didn't care, but because she'd begged me not to watch her fade. Lily had never understood that. She stood, threw a 20 on the table, and said, "You'll regret this, Dad." Then she walked out into the rain. When I got home, the storm had rolled in hard. Rain hammered the porch roof. I turned on the news just in time to hear the same startup story being discussed by a local anchor. "Officials expect further indictments within the week," she said. I looked around my kitchen, the silent witness to every lie that had just passed across that table, and realized something. This wasn't just about money. It was about the way my own daughter had learned to weaponize my love. The phone rang just after midnight. Private number. I let it go to voicemail. Jason's voice came through low and sharp. "Jack, you made a mistake talking to Lily like that. Don't forget, you're not the only one with something to lose." I replayed it twice, staring out the window at the lightning splitting the sky. When the thunder finally settled, I whispered to myself, "Promises mean everything. Guess it's time I kept mine." Then I opened my drawer, pulled out the old folder of receipts and transfer slips I'd saved for decades, and started sorting through the evidence, one page at a time. Because this time, I wasn't the one who was going to regret it. The morning after Jason's call, I woke to the sound of tires on gravel. For a split second, I thought Lily had come to apologize. But when I looked through the curtain, it wasn't her. It was a Charleston County cruiser parked out front. 2 officers stepped out, rain still dripping from their hats. "Mr. Brenner," one of them asked, "we need to ask you a few questions regarding a financial dispute." It felt like someone had sucked all the air out of the room. I invited them in, hands steady even though my heart wasn't. The older officer flipped open a small notebook. "Your daughter, Ms. Lily Brenor, claims you withheld a $50,000 investment she made in your name." For a moment, I didn't even understand the words. "She what?" "She said she transferred funds to you for business purposes, and you refused to release them." I laughed, a dry, bitter sound I didn't recognize. "Officers, I live on Social Security and a Ford pension. The only thing I've invested in lately is WD-40. They were polite. They knew the tone of a family war when they heard it. One of them leaned closer and said quietly, "Sir, it's a civil matter for now, but I'd recommend keeping documentation of everything." After they left, I stood at the window watching the cruiser pull away, its red taillights bleeding through the drizzle. My phone buzzed right then, a Facebook notification. Lily had posted, "My own father stole my savings. I wish I didn't have to do this publicly, but people should know the truth." By noon, the post had hundreds of likes, comments from her friends, from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. How could a father do that? Money makes people monsters. I scrolled until the words blurred. That night, I sat in my workshop. The rain had stopped, but the roof still dripped. I opened the folder of receipts I'd started sorting the night before. 40 years of small sacrifices stared back at me. The tuition check to UNC, the down payment on Lily's first apartment, the canceled checks for her wedding. Every line was proof of love. But love doesn't count in a courtroom, and it sure doesn't stop your daughter from turning you into a villain online. I printed every transfer, stapled each one to a note explaining what it was for. It took me 4 hours. When I finished, I stacked the pages in a neat pile and wrote across the cover, "For the record." The next day, I drove down to the police station, the one by Meeting Street where the flags always hang half-mast for something. I handed the clerk the folder. "I was told to document everything," I said. She nodded, slid it into a file, and stamped it received. When I got home, my neighbor, Carl, Vietnam vet, big talker, was waiting by the mailbox. He waved his phone. "Jack, you seeing this?" "Your daughter's making you out to be some kind of crook?" I just said. I guess that's what family looks like now. That night, the quiet felt sharper than usual. I made dinner but couldn't eat. Around 8, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Lily standing there, rain slicking her hair against her face. "Dad, we need to talk," she said. Her voice was calm, too calm. She stepped inside without waiting for me to invite her. "You didn't have to call the cops on us." I stared. "Lily, they came to me." She crossed her arms. "Jason's reputation is on the line. He said you could fix this easily by transferring the 50,000 back." "Back?" I repeated. "There was never any back. There was no money to begin with." Her expression hardened. "You're really going to ruin your own daughter over pride." That one word, pride, hit me wrong. "You mean the pride that built this house? Or the pride that paid your tuition? Maybe you should have kept some for yourself." She shook her head, eyes glossy, but not from tears. "You're old, Dad. You don't understand how things work anymore. Money's just—" "Don't say it," I interrupted. "Don't you dare say it's just money." We stood there, the space between us filled with every word we'd never said. Then she grabbed her purse and walked out. No goodbye, no glance back. 2 days later, a manila envelope arrived in my mailbox. Inside was a formal notice from her lawyer, intent to pursue civil recovery of funds. It was signed by Jason himself. Apparently he'd passed the bar last year. I sat on the porch, envelope in hand, the air thick with summer heat and betrayal. For a long time I didn't move. Then I went inside, poured a glass of bourbon, and opened my laptop. If they wanted a paper trail, I'd give them one. Every loan, every tuition check, every Venmo transaction that started with "just until next week." I uploaded them all, labeled each file carefully, even added screenshots of Lily's old thank you texts. When I was done, I emailed copies to my lawyer and, to make sure it couldn't disappear, sent another to the IRS Fraud Investigation Unit. I didn't add a note, just the documents in a single subject line. Potential misuse of family funds. Brenor, Jason, and Lily. My hand didn't shake when I pressed send. The silence afterward felt strange, almost clean. I walked outside to lock the gate. The air smelled like coming rain again. Out on the street, a car idled, headlights off. For a second I thought it was a neighbor. Then I saw Jason's shape behind the wheel, a cigarette burning between his fingers. He looked up, our eyes met through the glass, and he mouthed something I couldn't quite hear. But I didn't need to. The message was clear. He knew what I'd done. And for the first time in this whole mess, I didn't feel afraid. I just whispered to myself, "Let's see which promise breaks first." That night, sleep didn't come. Every creak of the house sounded like someone stepping on my porch. I kept thinking of Jason's cigarette burning in the dark, the way he stared at me through the windshield, like I was a problem to erase, not a father to respect. But fear doesn't last long when anger's been waiting for years. At sunrise, I brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead and opened the folder on my desk. Every receipt, every transfer, every temporary loan I'd made over the decades. They'd turned my kindness into their safety net, and now they wanted to cut me out of my own life. I spent the morning turning that folder into a weapon, scanned every document, numbered each page, wrote short notes in the margins, paid Lily's tuition, 2010, paid property tax for her home, 2014, paid Jason's medical bill, 2019. I wasn't just making records anymore. I was building a case. By noon, I drove downtown to the IRS field office on Meeting Street. The clerk behind the glass looked half my age, but sharp. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked. "Yes," I said, sliding the flash drive across the counter. "I believe I've been asked to fund a fraud." She blinked, then took it. "We'll forward this to our investigations unit." When I walked out into the Charleston heat, my shirt sticking to my back, it hit me. For the first time in years, I was doing something for me. Not to win, not to punish, just to set the damn record straight. That evening, my phone buzzed. A restricted number. I almost didn't answer. A calm male voice said, "Mr. Brenner, this is Agent Hill from the IRS. I've reviewed your materials. Could you confirm the connection between your daughter and the company listed here? Yes, sir, I said. She's married to the founder, and she's been managing his accounts. He paused. Then you've done the right thing contacting us. When the call ended, I just sat there for a while, staring at the half-empty bourbon glass on my table. Part of me felt sick, the rest of me steady, like tightening a bolt until it finally stops rattling. 2 weeks later, it started. Jason's company account got frozen. The local paper ran a story about a Charleston tech firm under investigation for investor fraud. I didn't say a word, but the neighbors did. People love a scandal, especially when it comes wrapped in money and family. Lily called that night. Her voice shook. Dad, they froze everything. Jason says someone sent them our records. I guess they were looking for truth, I said. Was it you? I didn't answer. Silence was enough. She hung up crying. I sat there listening to the quiet drip of rain against the window, feeling both 10 pounds lighter and 100 years older. The next morning there was a knock at my door. Not the hard knock of police. This one was hesitant, embarrassed. It was Officer Darius Calder, the same man who'd visited weeks ago. Mornin', sir, he said, removing his hat. We just came from your daughter's place. There was an altercation between her and Mr. Holt, Jason. Altercation? He blames her for the investigation. Things got heated. She's staying with a friend for now. I looked down at my hands, calloused from years of wrenching engines. She'll be okay? She's shaken up, but yes. He hesitated. You did nothing wrong, Mr. Brenner. Just be careful. People get desperate when money's gone. After he left, I sat on the porch and watched the sun come up over the river. The air smelled of salt and pine sap. For once, the world didn't feel tilted against me. A week passed. No calls, no knocks. The Gazette ran another update. Jason Holt, charged with tax evasion and investor fraud. Assets seized pending trial. I cut out the article, folded it neatly, and slipped it into the back of my ledger. Not out of spite, just for a history's sake. That same afternoon, a letter arrived from the bank. My name, bold on the envelope. Inside, a single sheet confirming that I'd been cleared of any financial wrongdoing. No one could twist the truth anymore. At sunset, I brewed tea instead of bourbon. I'd done enough burning for one lifetime. My phone buzzed again, a voicemail from Lily. Her voice was small, tired. Dad, I don't know what to say. Everything's gone. Jason's not who I thought he was. I wish I'd listened. A pause. I'm sorry. I replayed it twice. I wanted to feel joy, victory, something cinematic. But what I felt was quieter, like the hum of an engine that finally runs smooth. I walked into the living room, where the old photograph of Lily at age 10 still hung crooked on the wall, her holding a wrench too big for her hands, grinning like she could fix the world. I straightened the frame and whispered, "You'll learn to build again, kid." As I turned off the light, headlights flared through the front window. A car slowed, then stopped by the curb. My heart jumped, but when I peeked out, it wasn't a threat. It was a moving truck. Jason's old house across town was being emptied. Everything he'd built on, lies, boxed up and hauled away. I poured myself another cup of tea and stepped onto the porch. The air was cool, the cicadas loud, the world finally still. I thought about how easy it would be to call Lily, to tell her I forgave her. But forgiveness without accountability is just enabling. I locked the door, slid the deadbolt, and whispered to the empty house. Love built us, but boundaries, they keep us standing. Inside, the kettle clicked off, steady and sure, and for the first time in decades, the silence didn't sound lonely, it sounded free. 3 months passed before the courthouse finally called. The IRS case against Jason had gone federal, and they wanted me to testify as a witness. I remember standing there in front of the mirror, adjusting the only suit I still owned, the same one I wore to Lily's wedding. The tie had a faint coffee stain near the edge, but I kept it on. It reminded me who I really was, a man who'd worked with his hands, not stolen with them. The Charleston Federal Building smelled like dust and cold air conditioning. Reporters lined the steps outside, their microphones bobbing like fishing rods. I walked past them slowly, the summer heat pressing through my jacket. Inside, I saw Jason for the first time since all this began. He looked smaller somehow, his hair thinner, his suit borrowed. No Tesla waiting for him this time. Lily sat behind the defense table, pale, eyes red. She didn't look up when I took the stand. The prosecutor asked me to describe how the money requests began, how family help turned into blackmail, then into lies. I spoke calmly, no anger left to show. When they displayed the documents I'd collected, the tuition checks, the Venmo transfers, the loan notes written in Lily's handwriting, the room fell silent. The judge adjusted his glasses. Even Jason's attorney stopped scribbling. It wasn't revenge that filled the air. It was something heavier. Truth has a weight all its own. Jason tried to interrupt once, saying, "It was a misunderstanding, a family dispute." The prosecutor cut him off with the bank statements, showing how he funneled Lily's old college fund into his company account to pay personal debts. His face drained of color. The verdict came 2 days later, guilty on 3 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of tax evasion. Sentence, 5 years federal time plus restitution. It wasn't the kind of justice you celebrate with champagne. It was quieter than that, a door closing somewhere you once left wide open. When the trial ended, Lily caught me outside the courthouse. Rain had started to fall, the kind that blurs everything just enough to hide what you don't want to see. She stood there in a beige coat, arms crossed, her voice small. "I didn't know what he was doing, Dad." I swear, I looked at her, really looked, and realized she believed that. She hadn't known because she'd never wanted to. "Lily," I said, "not knowing doesn't make you innocent. It just makes you blind." She wiped her face. "Can we ever fix this?" "Maybe," I said softly, "but not with money." She nodded, then walked away, her heels splashing through the puddles. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of sweet tea instead of bourbon. The house was quiet, except for the steady ticking of the old wall clock. I opened my laptop and saw a message from an unknown email address. It was short. "Dad, I paid off the legal fees. I'm moving out of state for a while. Maybe when I figure out who I am without him, I'll come home." I read it twice, then closed the screen. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. A week later, I got a certified envelope from the court, a check for restitution signed under Jason's name. The amount was small, barely enough to cover what I'd spent over the years, but the memo line stopped me cold. In neat typed letters, it read, "For peace owed." I folded it carefully and placed it in the same ledger where I'd once recorded every debt, every disappointment. This time, the column marked "Balance Due" finally read 0. That weekend, I met my neighbor Carl at the farmer's market downtown. We sat on a bench with paper cups of coffee, watching boats drift on the river. He asked, "So, Jack, you ever gonna forgive her?" I thought about it for a moment. "Already did," I said. "Forgiveness isn't a gift you give the other person. It's a receipt that says you've stopped paying for their mistakes." Carl nodded. "That's a hell of a way to put it." That night, I came home to find a small brown package on my porch. No return address. Inside was a photo of Lily at age 10, holding a wrench beside me, both of us covered in grease, smiling like the world couldn't touch us. On the back, someone had written in faint ink, "Thank you for teaching me to build things that last." For the first time in a long time, I smiled without the weight of memory dragging me down. I pinned that photo on my fridge right beside the carrot cake label, "Birthday 70, uneaten." Some things you keep to remember how far you've come. The truth is, sometimes closure doesn't arrive with apologies or hugs. It comes with silence, with boundaries, with finally sleeping through the night, knowing you did the right thing. If you've ever had to choose between peace and family, between helping and losing yourself, tell me your story in the comments. I'd like to hear it. And if my story made you feel something tonight, Stay a while. There's more where this came from. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. It's just the quiet sound of a man locking his door, turning off the porch light, and finally resting easy.